Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. So this video is really interesting and amazing for you guys, and this video is super important. So if you want to protect your applications and make your application super secured, and if you have private, protected, all those routes, you want to guard it from the unauthenticated user, and based on admin user, staff user that we have in the Django REST framework, by default it is inbuilt, because user model, you don't need to create user model here. Okay, so they are already given here. If you go to XAMPP and if I go to DB course manage, here I'm going to show you a really important stuff, that auth user. As you can see, the auth user, you don't need to create that. They have already given you a template: ID, password, last login, is super user, username, first name, last name, email, is staff, is active, and date join. So they have already given you a real sample, how the all the tables and all the columns. What you just need to do is just put your username and email that would be shown here, and based on that you're going to authenticate that user with the token system. So that's why we need to use the token based authentication. Not only your username and password are important, I know that is really important, but you need to have an extra layer of security, added layer of security called token based authentication. That's going to really help you and identify you who you really are. Are you really an proper authenticated user for this application to use all these protected routes? So basically what we're going to do, in the header we're going to pass the access token, and based on the access token and his username and password, we're going to give him the access to see his profile information, which is a protected route. And the slash login slash registration, these are the public routes. So first we're going to go to login, and we're going to pass the token, and based on that we're going to give him the access to protected routes. And these are the steps that you need to follow. We need to install JWT package called SimpleJWT. As you can see in the documentation, I'm going to give you the link as well, and you need to just install that package. And for that you can just write it here. First you need to go inside your courses directory, Django course API and the courses, where we have the main settings.py file. In this directory I'm going to install Django REST framework SimpleJWT. It's going to make your JWT authentication very easy to code, because this is a beginner friendly thing. Okay, so if you just find it super complicated, just follow this video and it will be really easy for you. By default I have already installed it globally, so you don't need to do that. What I just need to do is just create a simple Django applications so that we can work with it. App called Python manage.py is startup accounts. Okay, so this accounts is created. Beautiful. Now this is the part where we're going to work mainly. Okay, so now to go to our settings and add those two things. So if I just go there, you know, this is a very common thing. You need to add whatever the apps that you have created, or this will work as a module. And we also need to add that thing, Django REST framework, okay, in the uls.py file. So this is the thing, installed apps, because we have added this package. You need to add those things, and the rest of the framework are really important. I have added a simple note so that you can add those two things. So these are the two things that I'm gonna add here in the settings file here. Okay, and I'm gonna format this thing. Okay, so one is for default authentication package, which is coming from the REST framework, SimpleJWT authentication, JWT authentication, and another is permission classes. You're not going to understand it at this moment, but later when I'm going to show you the private and public route system, then you're going to understand it really well. And it will be also coming from the REST framework, permissions is authenticated. So at this moment just add those two things, and the rest of the things are very similar. And here I'm going to create a urls.py file, because we also need that. And most importantly we need serializers.py file, because serializers are the file where we're gonna make our most of the work here. So this is the part where we're gonna work mostly with our API. Now we're gonna build our serializers.py file, and we have already built it. Now we're gonna do our main work. So from Django .contrib.auth.models, we're gonna import our model. We're gonna use import, which is user model. Okay, because Django already created that thing for us, which is inside our auth user. So our model is already created by the Django by default, so we don't need to do any other work. So from REST underscore framework, we need to import serializers that are going to serialize our Python objects into JSON format. And then we need one more stuff, which is from Django dot contrib dot auth dot password validation. We're gonna import validate password because we need to validate our password, whether it is right or wrong. We need to just work on that user as well. So we have imported our serializers, our users, our validated passwords, all of this stuff. Now we need to create a class that will handle all of our registration logic based on the serializer. And we just name it registration serializer. Serializer. And here we're going to write serializers dot model serializers. Model serializer. So we're going to inherit all the properties so that we can serialize this model. Okay, and now it's time to do some work. We're going to write password is equals to serializers dot character field. So this is new. So before that we used to build this kind of model inside our models.py file, like we used to do inside our this course, but this was our custom model, so we don't need to define it anything so we didn't need to define it in the serializer. We defined it in the model, but when we work with the accounts, this model is already there. We are just working inside our serializer so that we can make some models read only or write only. Here we'll just make it write only. We're gonna write only because this password field should be a write only field because we cannot read it, and this is the purpose of security. True. And then we have password 2. We need 2 passwords so that during the registration, and we're gonna do the same thing. We can just copy the same stuff and paste this thing. Beautiful. And I'm gonna add class meta as usual, and our model is user model, and these are the fields that we want. And here we want to show username, and we need to add email and password. So these are the fields that we're gonna need during the registration process. Password 2. Okay, and then we have the validation step. So this is very important, so you need to be really careful. So def validate, as this is a class, this is the thing that we call method, because class can have multiple methods or properties that we're gonna work on. So this is the method that's gonna validate that all this stuff. We're gonna validate attributes. Okay, so here I'm gonna write if attributes password. Okay, so password is not is equals to attributes of password. So make sure you do this is correct, this is password. If it is not correct, if it is not matched, then I'm gonna raise an error. Raise serializers dot validation error. So there is an error called validation error. It will say that password and password did not match. Try again. Okay, so this is the message then to show to the client that the password did not match. Otherwise, you're gonna validate password that we have imported from the password validation. We need to validate the password that would be coming from the attributes password and return the attributes. So this is the thing that you're gonna validate. Okay, so after the validation password is done, then we're gonna do create. So this is the thing where we're gonna create a user with validated password and the email field. Okay, so this is all the thing that we can do inside our serialization model, because we don't need to do anything inside our models. So this is empty. We used to do this kind of thing in the model, but in the authentication system you need to do this inside the serializer. So this is the best practices that you can do. And we're going to add validated data, and these datas are our user related data, like password, password 1, password 2. Here I'm gonna do validated data dot pop. It's gonna pop password 2, and I'm gonna also pop validated data dot pop password. Okay, so this is the thing that we're gonna pop from our response, and we're gonna store it inside the password field. And this is very important. You will understand it shortly why we are doing it. Then we're going to create a user instance with the user model, and we're going to pass the validated data. Now this validated data contains this username, email, password 1, and password 2 fields. So we're going to pop those out because we don't want to store them. We just pop them out from this response, and now these 2 fields will be there only inside our DB. We won't see any password. So because this is not good practice, we don't store password in the database. So okay, so that's the thing, we need to pop that out. And one more stuff, we need to hash it. So before that, we're gonna write set password, user.set password. So this is the way. So Django is a little bit of different compared to other framework, like in this case. So password, and here I'm gonna write password. So just copy the same name here. So we pop this out, password 1, because this is the password we're gonna set and add it to our user model, but it will not show into our DB, but we save the password, and then we just save this. Now all of the data that user provided, email, username, would be saved into our DB, and then we're going to return that particular user. So this is the flow. Once you identify this, we just need to pop those 2 out, and we need to create the user based on other fields. Here this star validated data means we are passing only these 2 fields here, and we're going to create the user object, and we also set the password in a different way, and we're going to save that thing and return that thing. Okay, so that is the most important stuff. Now we can create one more serializer. Here, class user serializer, and here I'm gonna write serializers dot model serializer, and here I'm gonna write class meta, and model is equals to user, because here we are creating user serializer just to check if the user is created. We want to check the response, just that, not anything else. We want to see the ID of the user, the username of the user after successful login and registration, and email of the user. So those are the 2 fields. So we don't want to show password here. So just to show user info for API. Okay, so this is the stuff. Now we just need to add those 2 things inside our views.py file. Now in the views.py file, we need to add a lot of stuff. So from REST framework dot decorators, so I'm gonna zoom it out a little bit because this file is pretty big. We're gonna import the API view so that we can create our API routes and permission classes, because we need to add some permission. If it is authenticated, where is the place that you can access to? If you're authenticated, then you can access to public profile information, and if you are not authenticated, then you cannot access that user information API. So those are the things that we need to handle it. Then we need to go to REST framework dot permissions, import allow any, and is authenticated. So these are the 2 things that we need. Allow any is for public route that login on registration, and is authenticated is for if you want to go to user profile page, then it will be protected based on the permission. And then we need REST framework dot status. You're gonna from REST framework, you're gonna import status to show the status information, and we also need REST framework.response import response, so that we can send the response to the client or the API so that the user can see. And finally, from .serializers, we're going to import the registration serializer and user serializer so that we can work with our API. Beautiful. Now we can create our login, and here I'm going to create our first register API and API view, and here I'm going to write, you already know about it because you're going to pass some data to the DB. So this is a post request, and we need to add the permission classes, and in the permission classes I'm going to add allow any because this is public route, and we're going to create register user. So this is the function that I have created, and we're going to take a request, and based on the request I'm going to first add a serializer is equals to registration serializer, and here we're going to pass the data from our client side, which is request.data. So in this way we're going to collect email, username, and then we have password and password to fields. So those are the fields that we need. Beautiful. So if the serializers dot is valid, then we're going to create this thing, which is serializer.save. So by saving this thing, we are saving the actual data that we collected from the client side or the postman into the DB, and we're going to return the response, and we're going to return response like user serializer, and user serializer takes user dot data. So what about the data that we are getting here? We're going to show all this data inside our user serializer, and user serializer we're going to show ID, username, and email fields. Okay, so those are the fields that we're going to show, and here we need status is equal to status dot http 201 created, because we created a new user, and then we're gonna do the same thing for here, but here we're going to need to show some error, serializers dot errors, and here I'm going to write 400 bad request. If it is not a valid, then you're going to show as a valid bad request. Now let's create our login route. So this was our register API. Now I'm going to create our login API. So just as before, you can copy this stuff and just remove this thing, and this is login user, and here we can remove everything. Okay, so for that login we need to collect our username and password. So we need to collect those two data. So how can we collect this thing? It's pretty simple. Username is equals to request dot data dot get, and we're gonna collect the username and the password that the user has set. Request dot data dot get password. Beautiful. And very easy stuff. And here we need to import something from our Django. So this is the thing that we need. This is the library or the package, whatever the thing, you need to import that from Django.contrib.auth. We're gonna import authenticate, and we're gonna authenticate all the things that we need, and also need a JWT token here from REST framework .SimpleJWT token underscore SimpleJWT tokens. You're gonna import access token. So this is the access token. This is the access token instance that we're gonna need to create a simple access token based on our user information. Okay, and authenticate is to authenticate based on user data information that we have passed, like username and the password. So make sure that those are really important. And here inside that we're gonna add this thing, authenticate, and authenticate based on username is equals to username whatever we passed, user name, and password is equals to password that we have passed. And if not user, I'm gonna return a response, and we're gonna pass a message that invalid username and password if it is not a valid one. And we're gonna pass this status code of 400 if it is not authenticated user, if it is not user. Okay, then we're gonna create an access token using this access token dot for user, and we're gonna pass the user. So based on that user, if it is authenticated, then we're gonna pass that user so that we can get our access token based on that user information. Okay, and if it is not, if the user is not authenticated, or the information that you have passed is false, that you're going to show invalid username or password. Otherwise, you're going to proceed to the next step, and we're going to collect the user information that we get based on our authentication, and we're going to generate a access token. And this is the thing we're going to return in the response. Okay, so what about the thing that we're going to return here? We're going to show. So first is access token. You're going to convert it into this string format, and I'm going to write access, and you're going to add also user. This is user serializer, and you're going to pass the user information dot data, because serializer dot data, it contains all the information that the user object has set, like username, password, ID. Normally we don't see the user information, like we're gonna see the password. Normally we don't see the password, we're gonna only see the user name and the email and the ID, all of this stuff. And that's why you need user serializer, so that we can see the information in a nice way in a JSON format, that whatever the user we get. Okay, so this is the step. This is for the access token step, and this is for to get the response, and this is for the authenticate. So 3 steps that we are. First we're going to collect, then we're going to authenticate, and here we are authenticating based on the user data provided, and then we created the access token, and we're going to return all of this stuff. Return result. Return result. Those are the things that we really want. Okay, so let's test this out first. Okay, so if you really want to test this thing, you need one more API view. So we can just copy the whole stuff there, and this is for our protected route. Here we're gonna test our protected routes, and this would be is authenticated, and here we're gonna name it profile view. Okay, so basically we're gonna show the profile information, and I'm gonna delete this thing. It will just return the response, nothing else. We're gonna response user serializer, and whatever we get, the data that we are getting here, the authenticated user information is inside request.user, because that contains all the information of the authenticated user, and we're going to pass that user information into user serializer so that we can see the data dot data. Beautiful. You can make it a new thing called user serializer is equals to user serializer, and you can easily do that, and you can pass request.user because that holds all the information. If you write request.user.email, you're going to show request.user email information, and if you go to write username, you're going to show user information. And then you can pass user serializer.data here, user serializer.data, and that is a more cleaner way if you want. Okay, so this is a really nice way to do that, but you can also do both of the stuff. Both of the things are same. Now we need to create a separate style, which is you need to go to urls.py file, and here I have created all the nodes. You can just copy this thing and paste here. And first we need to create a login route, and we're going to import some views. First is register user and login user and profile view. And we have the profile view, login, register user, login user, and the profile view. All of the things are coming from our views.py file here. This is the function's name, and when we go to this route, and this route, we're going to show us this thing. First we have the register, login, and the profile. Now I think we are all set to go to check this out, and before that we need to go to our eval.py file, and we need to connect our accounts app that we have created. Here I'm gonna write api.auth/ and I'm gonna write accounts.urls, accounts, which is the name of our app for the accounts.urls. Okay, or api/auth, and then we're gonna go to /register. Okay, so let's test it out. So Python manage, here I'm gonna write Python manage.py run server. Let's check it out if we have any error or not. And our DB is running. Just make sure it's post request and api/auth/ and register/. So this is our URL. Yeah, it's just /URL. Yeah, perfect. It's just /URL, and I'm gonna add username and email. Mail is gmail.com, and this is our password 1, and then we have password 2. So 1 2 3 4 and 1 2 3 4. So let's check it out, and we're gonna pass those things inside our views.py file, and it will collect the user data from our this panel, and it will create this user, and we're going to return this user information, and you're going to see it's just code of 201 if it is registered properly. Okay, so click on this. So there is some error, password 2. So user got unexpected keyword arguments password 2. So we did some mistake here. Password 2 here. We pop this out. Yes, password 1 and password 2 and password 2. Make sure you just name everything perfectly. I have checked every single makes spelling or any other stuff, but the main thing is same. So if we just go, okay, this password is too short. It must contain 8 characters. Okay, or so that was one of the problem. 1 2 3 4 plus 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 plus. So we're gonna make the password a little stronger, otherwise they won't let us. Okay, now it is created. ID of 2, username, all of this stuff. Now if I create one more profile called prince, and prince@gmail.com with the same type of password, I'm gonna send it. Okay, now we have 2 user. Okay, now let's check it out, our login route. So /login, and here we need the username and the password. Okay, so we only need two things, because if we go to views.py file, for login we only need just two things, and based on that you authenticated. Okay, and we also get a access token after the login, so make sure that. So username and password, and just save this thing. And forbidden, so why is forbidden? Yeah, we got two user because it is added, and the date and the first name and last name you can add. If he's a staff or not a staff, he's active or not active, you can add a lot of stuff. As you can see, password is hashed now, and based on the name, username and the password. Okay, now I forgot to add this thing. So that is the problem of copy pasting. Because we copy pasted something, we missed something, so we need to add this API post again, and we're gonna add our username and the password, and this is a post request, and I'm gonna log in, and as you can see it has created a simple access token. This is a very secure thing. Make sure you just add this thing, and we have a status code of 200. It means that it is successful, and we got our desired response. We wanted our access token and the user information who have logged in. Here we're gonna see the user information. If you just go and add another information like prince, and with the same username and password, we're gonna get his access token, and this is the access token we need in order to retrieve this information. So we have another URL, which is profile information / profile, and this is how we're gonna access / profile, and this is a get request. And if I go to views, and here I'm gonna add one more API view, and this is get request because we are not posting any data, we are just getting it. This is a get request, and if I just add it here, it says that authentication credential is not provided, because we need to put some authentication information here in the authorization section. This is really important, guys. If we say bearer token, you're going to pass the token that we have copied from our body. Okay, you have to pass this thing, and we're going to send that with this username and password. And now, as you can see, we just needed that token and pass the thing into our this API routes, and we pass this using the header. So that's why header is so important. Here this request.url, that means that user is already there. You just need to be authenticated, so that's why you use this thing called REST framework.permission is authenticated, is for protected route. And for getting that, you need to collect some data from the request object, request.user, because that guy is already authenticated. You just need to pass the token, and it will be guarded inside this authenticated system, and you need to pass the token. Okay, pass the token here, whatever we have passed, and based on that we are getting this user profile information. So how beautiful is that? And if I go to body again, and if I log in as my account, and if I go to post, so post method, we need to write login, and using the post we got the data. Now if we want to access my profile information, which we did here / profile, and we need to convert it into get request, and the authorization you need to pass. If I pass his authentication, we're going to see Prince data. We are not seeing my data, but here we want to see my data. So delete and add my token, and now you're going to see only my information, because my information, my user data is really correlated with the token, because token is actually authorizes us who we are, and this user is authenticated by this token, and this token actually validates that this user is there and this user is the correct user. So based on the token we can retrieve user information. So this is the security. If you change one of them, like if you change a little bit here we just delete it, we won't see anything. See, we can't access it. So if we add it again it is working. So if you do slight mistake, if other person don't know this token, that you have passed through the header, if he doesn't understand or get this token, he can't retrieve your information. So this is heavily protected at this moment. So this is the protected routes, and this is our login API and register API. These are our public routes. And now the passwords are not matched. Okay, now the password are not matched, and now if I just run this, this username already exists, and if I just change it to another name, and I said password don't match. If you have a different password, it says password don't match. So we have covered a lot of stuff here, all the logics, all the validations, all the creation of the user, and we just use that thing inside our views.py file by importing all the API views on the permissions, guards, or all of the stuff that we Django REST API SimpleJWT token actually gives. So we just needed that thing, and only this thing actually authenticated our user, and it gave us an access token so that we can work with it very easily. And access token is nothing but it takes our user information, and based on that it creates a really nice access token based on that particular user, so that we can authorize very well and identify who is the real user for this authenticated token. So these are the stuff that really make you a really good level developer. And once you identify how to work with this thing, you're going to be really master at Django and the Django REST framework and other REST framework as well. So till then, take care, bye bye, and see you in the next video with more awesome and amazing content in the near future.